Jewish Education in Media is pleased to present L'Chaim, a program that highlights the people, issues, and events of importance to the Jewish community. Now here is your host, Rabbi Mark Golub.
I'm Mark Golub. And how would you characterize someone who learned that hospitals in northern Israel lacked MRI equipment and then provided those hospitals with the funding necessary for each hospital to obtain an MRI machine? Or what would you think of someone who made sure that thousands of poor and elderly Jews had food at a cost of $29 million a year? And someone who also sponsors summer camps for poor children, builds fallout shelters for Jews terrorized by Hamas rockets in southern Israel, provides educational scholarships for Druze men and women who serve in the IDF, or who creates shelters for the homeless in Jerusalem. I mean, who does that? It sounds too good to be true, doesn't it? And you know, when something's too good to be true, it normally isn't true. Except in this case, it's all true. And it's the result of the Herculean work of a true gibor on the world Jewish scene today, a real hero of contemporary Jewish life. It's an honor to welcome back to L'Chaim Rabbi Yechiel Eckstein, President of the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews, an organization Yechiel personally founded in 1983, and which is expected to raise $150 million this year from 1.5 million evangelical Christian donors, from ordinary working class members of the evangelical Christian community who send in some 7,000 checks every single day, with the average donation being around $70, which Rabbi Yechiel Eckstein then uses to support a wide range of Jewish causes that hugely benefit the Jewish people and the state of Israel. And yet, Rabbi Yechiel Eckstein has come under some serious and often brutal attack. Critics accuse him of being an egomaniac, fixated on personal publicity, and claims his work often hampers the work of formal Jewish organizations and makes the government of Israel look as if it's either uncaring, incompetent, or both. So who is the real Yechiel Eckstein? Who are you really? The outstanding Jewish journalist and writer Zev Chafetz has done a brilliant, authorized biography of Yechiel Eckstein. It's entitled The Bridge Builder, published by Sentinel, an imprint of Penguin Random House. It's a fabulous read. By the way, any of you who've read Zev Chafetz knows he's an outstanding writer of fiction and nonfiction. But The Bridge Builder is a fabulous read, beginning with an opening chapter that will tear at your heart, entitled The Worst Day of My Life. What a chapter, Yechiel. 5 pages describes how the Chabad synagogue, where Yechiel Eckstein, an Orthodox rabbi with smicha from Yeshiva University, who often led part of the services every Shabbat morning, and where his Orthodox wife Bonnie and their 12-year-old daughter Tamar were gathered to celebrate that morning her becoming a bat mitzvah, how Yechiel Eckstein was virtually pulled off the pulpit, banished to the back of the room, because he was working with members of the Christian community, and the party he and his wife had planned for their daughter for after services was virtually destroyed. Yechiel Eckstein was alone that day. He recalls feeling humiliated and alone. And it's clear even his wife Bonnie, a Barnard graduate, who couldn't understand why the man she'd fallen in love with and married, a rabbi's son, a big, good-natured basketball-playing jock who was a folk music star playing on the kosher college music circuit, had transformed into a man who was befriending Republican Reaganite evangelicals, was appearing on Pat Robertson's television show. Even Bonnie did not understand his mission. And yet Yechiel Eckstein recalls, while this was the worst day of his life, he said to the bridge builder, "It didn't even occur to me to quit." And 30 years later, Yechiel Eckstein is going stronger than ever. And for every critic he has, he receives even greater support and appreciation from leading figures in the Jewish establishment and in the state of Israel. And I'm not neutral on the issue of Yechiel Eckstein. I got to know him in the early days of Shalom TV when he was kind enough to sit with me then. He and I have been at many evenings together in support of major Jewish causes, including the Friends of the IDF, to which Yechiel's fellowship has donated millions upon millions of dollars. He's always been especially kind to me, always ready to appear with me on camera. So I'm thrilled to be able to welcome him back to L'chaim. Yechiel, thank you so much for sitting again at this table. It is wonderful to be with you.
Thank you for such a beautiful introduction. I wonder if my mother would believe it, but thank you. Very kind.
I say again, when I think of the work you've done and the work you are doing, it's almost too good to be true, and when it isn't, when it's too good to be true, it normally isn't. And yet, Yechiel, what you've done is true. And there's so many things I want to talk to you again about. But I first want to say, it's been my good fortune to be a friend of yours, and the work you do is outstanding. And so, Mazal Tov. And
thank you,
kavod.
Mark, and thank you for your perseverance over the many years, and despite all the challenges that you face, to keep this Jewish television program alive. It's not a small thing.
No, thank you.
The Talmud says, "Lefum tsara agra," the greater the pain, sometimes the greater the reward.
Mm-hmm.
As you said, there's been a lot of pain for many years, going to today.
Yeah.
It hasn't stopped. Just this past week, a group of rabbis attacked me, which is not unusual.
Where are these rabbis?
These rabbis are, there are 4 or 5 rabbis in Israel who attack me and the organization because the funds are coming from Christians. And they even say that it's prohibited to accept funds. And so I posed, and there was an article just this week attacking me, and for that, and I posed the question to them, if you mentioned MRIs. We have 400 projects in Israel, MRIs being one of them. 6,000 bomb shelters that you mentioned. I said, would these rabbis say that if, God forbid, their child needed an MRI, would they say no because it's from Christians? Or if it was during a war and missiles were flying and he or those who follow them would say, would he actually say it's prohibited, even pikuach nefesh, and danger of your life? And they said yes. At least one of them said yes. The others have not responded, which is crazy.
It's crazy.
And
it's crazy.
Yeah, it's ideological. The very people who attack me, Mark, are almost in every case, I've never met them. They've never met me. They accuse me of missionary activity, which of course I'm a smicha from Rabbi Soloveitchik Zal at Yeshiva University, which I would never do, never allow to happen. And not one person in the 38 years that I've been doing this, not one Jew has converted or any kind of instance like that. But there are people who, for all sorts of reasons, it's in their best interest to attack it.
So your option was either to do it through the Jewish agency, or for some reason you felt you could do a better job outside the Jewish agency.
I have been contributing for 15 years, $177 million to the Jewish agency.
In the aggregate.
In a total.
Yeah.
A total. Roughly $12 million a year. But I felt that it's not doing the job. It's going into some kind of an infrastructure. I don't want to get into my opinions of the Jewish agency. They closed their Aliyah department 3 years ago. They changed their strategic plan, as legitimate to do, to Jewish identity. That doesn't affect the fact that there's an elderly Holocaust survivor sitting in Donetsk who doesn't have food and whose bombs are flying around there, and they need a situation. What, you're going to tell them, well, it's not in the budget? That doesn't affect.
Okay.
So I've been able, Mark, to the blessing that I've been given is that I've been able to keep my eye on the ball. The ball here is get as many Jews to Israel as possible, helping as many Jews who are under anti-Semitism or in fighting zones to get them to Israel, to help those who are not with their food, clothing, medicine, heating, fuel. And I've been able to work through groups like Chabad, through groups like the Joint, like the JDC. This is the salt of the earth. These are the holy people, etc. The other organizations just don't have the resources, or I would say the ability to. Christians aren't there to be used. They're not there to be manipulated for their money or even for their political support. It's a relationship building. That's why I called the organization, even though it's not a great name, but the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews, not the International Alliance of Christian Jews. What we do is we strengthen the spiritual bonds between Christians and Jews and Christians and Israel. From that stems tourism. I started Christian tourism to Israel, that whole area, 30 years ago, 35 years ago. Christian tourism is something that people don't take into account, but it stems from that revolution that I created after 2,000 years where Christians are seen as the enemies, fratricide, to say, hey, that's not true necessarily today, and it's certainly not true of most evangelical Protestants. And I was able to shape that together with people like the demonized Pat Robertson, Jerry Falwell, and so many others, to get them to, the fact that evangelicals are supporting Israel today isn't a given, Mark. People read in the newspapers today, in the New York Times, about the concern that the president has with Jews and evangelical Christians about that sentence, that clause, took me 38 years of agony to bring about, that people would just take it for natural. Evangelicals are supporting Israel. They're not. They weren't. They've grown, and I've succeeded, with God's help, I've succeeded to direct that burgeoning group to become supportive of Israel. But now for groups who see us with the $150, $160 million budget now, when we've never in 30 years had a down year. And I might say, we also do everything wrong. We do fun. We don't have a dinner. We don't have a list of our donors and how much they give. We don't have an endowment. Every year, we have to start off from zero. Why? For 30 years, 33 years. Because we believe that when we're asking our donors to help feed hungry Jews, to help provide security. We provide security for Jewish institutions around the world. Interestingly enough, all the Chabad houses and Jewish institutions from Greece to Morocco to Venezuela to Cyprus to all over the world. And that funding is coming from Christians. When we do that, then there needs to be a change in Jewish attitude. I had what I called the 4 A's over the years that I wanted from Jews. I knew what I wanted from Christians to get them to be supportive of Israel and Jewish people. But this is a dialogue, it's a relationship, it's a fellowship. What did I want from Jews? A, the first A, to become aware that Christians are supporting Israel, evangelical Christians. We've passed that. It took me a lot of years, but we passed that. B, to acknowledge that support. Say it publicly. We had an issue over the years of Haredi institutions taking money from us, but under the table. They wouldn't announce that we do that. And we finally came to a position, we said we are not going to give any Jewish group money if they're not going to publicly acknowledge it. It's not my ego. I mean, I'm sure I have an ego, strong ego too, or big ego. Nobody who does these things cannot have. I want respect for my donors. My donors are giving sacrificially. They're giving up a vacation. They're giving up a new car. They're tithing. They're giving 10% of their social security. They are giving like Jews do not give. I'll say that for the record, frankly. How many Jews do we know? I'll give you one story. You mentioned we get 7,000 pieces of mail with checks a day. Most of them come with stories. We have this woman, a single mom in Florida, who was giving us $35 a month for a few years. Then it started jumping to $70 a month. How did that happen? We call up these people. We have a team of people who call to thank donors, never to pitch. We don't pitch and ask for funds in that way. So we called her and we asked how did it go from 35 to 70 like that? She said, I'm a school teacher and I'm a single mom with 2 kids and I don't have much money, but the one thing that I love is Starbucks latte. And I realized one day that instead of spending $5.50 a day for latte from Starbucks, I could go across the street to McDonald's and buy a latte for $4 and save $1.50 every day to help Israel and the Jewish people. That's our donor. That's one of the 1.5 million donors. If Jewish organizations think that they can bring in successfully the millions of dollars that we have brought in, they're mistaken. Federations have now a Christian desk. AIPAC has a Christian desk. Jewish Agency now has a Christian desk. It's not going to work because they only see Christians in terms of what Christians can give to them. Money, political clout, etc. We see it as a relationship building, as a fellowship, as genuine relationship where we're trying to strengthen their bonds with Israel and with the Jewish people. And so the second A of acknowledgement, the third A is appreciation. I might say there's we fund 400 different groups in Israel alone and projects. Only in one case do we let the money go without them publicly acknowledging that it's coming from us. And that's for a particular shelter for battered Haredi women, where if we were up front, if they did it, then the rabbis wouldn't permit them to get money, and they need the money. The fourth A is attitude change. That's where we're at. Jews are aware that Christians, evangelical Christians, they acknowledge it. Most organizations, except what happened with the Jewish Agency and others, are willing to show appreciation publicly. Attitude change after 2,000 years is a lot more difficult. There are still many Jews in America from the left and from the right, actually less from the right than from the left, who haven't changed their attitude. A goy is a goy, from the right would be the way it would be put. From the left is they're just trying to make this into a Christian nation and erode civil liberty. The reality is that there are millions of Christians in America. They're 1/3 of the population in America. Millions of Christians all over the world. You have now in Latin America, which used to be an entirely Catholic continent. Today, almost every country has 30% evangelical Protestants, Pentecostal Protestant in them. Korea, China, 1 billion people. There's 100 million Christians there right now, and it's going to continue to grow. I don't understand how Jews don't get it. There is this strategic ally. We can't do this alone. And those Jewish organizations that think they can, I believe, are mistaken both about Jewish power, Jewish clout, and we see with this Iran treaty that it can have a backlash against Jews. But if we made this not a Jewish issue, and not even an Israel issue, but we made this an issue of concern to Christians in America who are afraid that this could be used against America, if we put this into the larger context of world policy, then it's not a Jewish issue. You've spread it over millions of people. How many Jews are there in Seoul, South Korea? You know, we have an office there, but how many are there even in Brazil, where you have a decent Jewish population? But when you have 100 million Christians joining you in Brazil, and you have millions in Korea and in China and in the Philippines and etc., it's we haven't changed Jewish attitudes yet. We're still there. There's more to do, but that's what I'm leaving for the next generation.
I have one more quick question for you. There are people who worry that just as there is concern about how committed the next generation of Jewish kids will be, there's a concern that the next generation of evangelical Christians also will not have the same passion for the Jewish people and the state of Israel. You're in this world. Is it true? How much does it concern you?
It's a great question, Mark. It shows your Ri'iyah la'atid, your look to the future. It is true. Not to the degree that most Jewish institutions or people think that it is, but the same influences of the BDS movement and of the left that are questioning the support for Israel, the same J streets that are happening within the Jewish community, the same alienation and distance that young Jews, many of them, are having towards Israel. It's happening, albeit to a much, much lesser extent in the Christian community.
How much does it concern you?
I'm concerned about the future, but frankly, I mean, I'm still a Jew and I'm a rabbi. This might be my work, my passion. I'm more concerned about the fact that young Jews are alienated from Israel than the fact that young Christians may be. that hurts, and it's, look, if we can't rely on the Jewish, I am saying, yes, Christians are strategic allies, we should work with them, but you have to rely on your core Jewish, and when your core Jewish is imploding and disintegrating more and more in the past year than it was last year, we haven't hit bottom yet. That's of concern to me. In terms of the Christian side, we have efforts. We have a new program called Next Gen with internet and with the seminaries. It's important to get to the very institutions that most Jews are anathema, the Liberty Universities of Jerry Falwell, the Pat Robertson's Regent Universities, the Baylors, the places like that. We need to get to the seminaries because they are bringing up the next generation. And we need to understand the right approach to get to Christians and the next generation. It's not by narrow self-interest things. And unfortunately, and here's my criticism, not criticism, but of my feelings of Kufai and of John Hagee. John Hagee is very narrow in his. I know the Jewish community thinks he's the world, etc., and he is nowhere. Kufai has a budget. I mean, it's a handful of money, under a handful that they're giving away, but John Hagee's ideology is very, very narrowly accepted. This Christian Zionist, strong Christian Zionist, very narrowly accepted, even within the Pentecostal realm, let alone within the Southern Baptist realm, let alone within the evangelical Christian community. If there are 70 million Christians in this country, adults, a very narrow segment is going to adopt much, much more are going to adopt our, let me call it, mainstream, educational, relationship-building approach. I can get into churches he can't even get near. Our 1.5 million Christian donor base, is so much more, I can't even start to tell you, than anything that he and Kufai could do. So while they are good, and they do good work, and I've given them, so to speak, acknowledge that politically I'm not going to be there where you have our Stand for Israel program. We do it through our huge network, but the evangelical, and even though Jewish community sees him as the niche to the Christian community, the fact of the matter, which he is, but the fact of the matter is the evangelical world in America and around the world is so much, it's 98% more, 99% more than the ideology that would buy into that. So for the next generation, to get back to that, we need to keep our eye on the ball. The ball isn't just that 1% that can fit into a Kufai ideology. The ball is getting 99%. Let them do that with that group of people. Gesundheit, if the Jewish community wants to see them as the entirety of Christian support, I don't care. But we need to be getting to the 99% of the older generation, which I've been focused on for 38 years, and to the next generation. But solidly, they are still behind us and will be as long as they are biblical oriented. As long as their pastors are preaching to them the centrality of the Bible, we are okay because we are the Jewish people. And God in the Bible, in Genesis chapter 12, verse 3, promises, Va'avarcha mevarchecha, those who bless the seed of Abraham will be blessed. As long as we can keep the emphasis on that biblical message, which is their biblical message, then we'll be okay.
Okay. You have pointed out that every single year, your total amount of donations has increased.
Our income.
Correct. I'm concerned for you, because of the work you do, that if the next generation of evangelicals is not as committed as their parents or grandparents, sooner or later that number will begin to decline rather than rise each year. And so part of my asking you the question was whether that is either a concern you have, and it is, at the moment do you say to yourself, I'll cross that bridge when I get to it, or is it of a greater concern to you?
Yes, good questions, Mike. That's a great question. Obviously, it's of concern, but frankly, very little. I really believe in this spiritually. I'm not a fundraiser. I know people at Federation will say I'm the best fundraiser around. I'm not a fundraiser, and I'm not a politician. I'm a rabbi. And I believe in this in a spiritual basis. And I believe the same way that each year our board insists that we not have an endowment and that we use up all the money that we gained that year for the purposes that it's intended. When we tell Christians they're Jews who need money for food, we are going to take that money and put it into food right away. And we're going to close the year and start with a zero balance all over again. So am I concerned about the future? Obviously, but I really do have that belief that I can only do what I can do. If I do it with an attitude of Shivisi Hashem lenegdi tamid, my God's presence is guiding me and leading me, then I attribute all these numbers to God's blessings, to doing it the right way. And same thing with this. I believe that God has a calling not just to Jews, but to Christians, to help Israel, to save the Jewish people. They're a part of the story. They're our strategic allies. And as long as we do what is right and ethical, I come already from the time with Jim Baker and Jimmy Swaggart and seeing a lot of Christian ministries imploding. My greater concern, frankly, is not the younger generation of donors and we've never had a down year. And we've adjusted. We're very sophisticated in our funding. We're already raising tens of millions of dollars from mobile apps, which is the younger generation. Most of our donors are 60-plus women. But we also have a whole outreach now to the younger generation and using internet. And I remember we just started raising money from internet 3-4 years ago. Now we're up to $20, $30 million, 40, just from internet, etc. So I'm concerned, my greater concern is succession. My greater concern is what's going to happen if
when you're not there.
When I'm not there. And I really
You've got to hope somebody comes in.
And I prayed for years in that, and God has sent another messenger.
Really?
Yes.
What's his name?
It's a her.
What's her name?
Her name is Yael, and she happens to be my daughter.
No kidding.
No
You've got to bring her next time.
She has gotten the vision. She writes a column in the Jerusalem Post every week, and she is the face of the fellowship already. And for the future.
Okay. I asked you before.
And she happens to be my daughter.
Isn't that lovely?
She was my child, the most difficult of my children. I was afraid would go off into, she's a hippie, but she's Bretzlev. And she and her husband are Bretzlev Hasidim, Kalbach, Chabad, she still dresses though in tie-dyes like from the 60s.
As we speak, how old is she?
She's 31.
Okay. Well, good for you and Mazal Tov to you.
Thank you.
So you did speak to me about what you feel the future is in terms of the evangelical next generation. But you said something I thought so important, that it's really your concern what happens to the next generation of the Jewish youth. And you say at the moment it doesn't look good to you. We have not even reached the nadir, as you describe it. So I want to know what your instinct is. Not that there's a panacea here, but Yechiel Eckstein, what do you wish the Jewish community was doing better, more of, that you think might have impact of a positive nature on the next generation of young Jews who are at the moment either on the margins of Jewish life, are not engaged in Jewish life? What would you see us do that would engage and bring the next generation in more so that we would secure the Jewish future?
I appreciate your asking that question. You have the federations that have a GA every year where they're asking that question. And when all the Jewish leaders are addressing precisely your question. So I won't be presumptuous enough to think that I have an answer when all the Jewish leaders that come together every year can't come up with an answer. But I do have an opinion. My opinion is, how many times at that GA do you think the word God is said? My opinion is that there is a lack of vision in the Jewish leadership, not a lack of money, and a lack of spirituality in the underpinnings of everything that the Jewish community does. And that this next generation of Jewish youth is scratching the surface and saying, oh my gosh, the emperor's not wearing clothes. Why isn't there a stronger outreach to the intermarried, to the Christian side of the intermarried? Why is it just left for a couple of reform rabbis to do from their perspective? Where is the Orthodox? Where is the establishment? You know, when I started in this business, joining ADL 38 years ago, I was one of the few people with a yarmulke in Jewish organizational work. That was a time that federations didn't really have people who wore a yarmulke, who were religious. They've come a long way, thanks to people like a Yitz Greenberg and like others. But let me put it this way. So long as each organization, whether it's AIPAC approaching it politically, whether it's the federations approaching it in terms of fundraising, whatever it is, so long as there is not a spiritual motive there underpinning the reasons that Jews should stand with Israel and move there and fight against the establishment rabbis. I am so opposed to the control that the right-wing Orthodox rabbis have in Israel that it is outrageous. You have a situation now, we've brought close to 400,000 Jews from the former Soviet Union to Israel. Many of them are not halachically Jewish. You have a situation where 300,000 Jews have come from the former Soviet Union to Israel who are not halachically Jewish. Now they have already, you have over 100,000 of these children born in Israel who are not halachically Jewish. They can't have a bar mitzvah or a bat mitzvah. If they want to get married, they have to leave the country. They serve in the army, and if they're killed, they can't be buried together with their comrades in a Jewish cemetery. The Giur issue, the conversion issue, is run by right-wing people, not by the Rabbi Riskins and people like that. you have this absurd situation where I would say to those who care, come to Israel, fight it, beat it, take control. Now, the problem is that, especially under Prime Minister Netanyahu, you have a political situation controlling what's right and what's wrong. When you have a situation where even Prime Minister Netanyahu knows that this is wrong, the conversion issue and everything, but he brings in order to maintain his coalition, he brings in Shas and Aguda and has them controlling the Department of Interior, the Chief Rabbinate, etc., so that no change can be made on that, all so that he can have his political coalition not on the basis of what's right or wrong. You're not going to have a change. The young people are too smart for that. They see through it. They see that it has no spiritual base. They see that each one is just picking up for their political reasons with the right. It's polarized with the left, with the right, with the ideological one. I don't care about that. There are Jews who are hungry. There are Jews who are refugees, who have no place to go and nobody helping them. Thank God for Chabad. I know it's not probably part of the group that you're referring to, of those who, I believe Chabad has saved this generation of Jews worldwide. And I believe that as secularism continues to erode in Jewish sensibilities and institutions in the American Jewish community, and I know American Jews think only in terms of American Jewry. They don't think widely in terms of the world Jewry. But if not for Chabad, I don't know where we would be. And so, I don't know, I guess I have a harsh word for everyone. but the young people can pick this up. The emperor is not wearing clothes. Mm-hmm. What happens at those GAs? How many people leave a GA and feel better Jewishly? What happens in our synagogues? How many people who come to shul leave with a spiritual high that prompts them to say, I want to come more often. I want to do more for the Jewish people. I want to help on the social action part. Our institutions are failing us. I can't be the answer. I mean, I have problems myself with the government. We had a program for the earlier years we worked with the government of Israel. We have money. We established, for example, a program on Bitachon Tsunati, a national food safety security program, safety net program food. We would give 30 million, the government would give 30 million. This was 4.5 years ago that we decided we would do that. 2.5 years in, by the way, they still don't have it. 4.5 years later, 2.5 years in, I said, this is ridiculous. I can't wait on the government. And so we started our own food program. And now for elderly alone, it's a food program of $29 million. Fortunately, we have the funds and we can do that. I'm not going to wait for the government to feed the hungry who don't care that there's a deficit in the treasury. The people want food. The people need to. The children, the youth at risk programs need. We fund the IDF. We fund $5 or $6 million each year just to help the soldiers with their basic needs. The soldiers are a reflection of Israeli society. And 1 out of 3 children in Israel is below the poverty line. 1 out of 5 elderly has a food crisis. I know that many of the people here aren't aware of that. And in fact, that's one of the attacks. You didn't get to that, but one of the strongest attacks against me is how we present on TV in America and around the world the situation as it is. And they say, don't air your dirty laundry, Jewish laundry. You know, nobody's saying it doesn't exist. They just say, don't portray it the way you do in such stark form. Or it's in the book and it's public, Abe Foxman walking out of the session one time that I was invited by a certain committee, by a woman who was the head of the Jewish agency then, who believed in our work and who gave me an award in this committee meeting. He walked out. He told the Jewish press he's walking out because of the way in which we kowtow to the Gentiles. And in his recent statement, it makes him sick to his stomach the way we raise funds. Good. Good. Let the Jewish community be embarrassed that Christians are helping these Holocaust survivors when the Jewish community is not doing its part enough. Let Israel be embarrassed. When we built 6,000 shelters, everyone in the press asked us, aren't you taking over the role of the government? Yes, the role of the government is to provide security for the Jewish people. But I see an older person or a young person or someone who needs a bomb shelter or any of the 400 projects, and I have to make a decision. Am I going to simply do nothing and complain and blame the government? No, you should be providing food, you should be providing heating fuel, you should be providing water for those who can't afford it, etc., and bomb shelters. Or am I going to say, yes, that's the government's role. Yes, that's the federation's role. But when makom she'en anashim hishtadel liot ish, I have a choice to make. I am very fortunate. I can complain and I can do something about it. And that's what I try to do, and perhaps that's what people resent about me, that I can not just complain as they do, but I have the ability to do something about it, and then to say, and this is where I'm tough, I know, and probably wrong, to go back to the Jewish community and say, we, not you, we Jews are not doing enough to meet the crisis in all areas, not just the BDS movement and, put some people on campus and down. The world Jewish community and the exigencies and the threats to Jewish life, our Jewish institutions are not meeting the need. But we need the Jewish community for the next generation and this generation to have leaders who aren't so small that they get politically or ideologically carried away either for the right or for the left. And we need people who are going to fight the system when it's wrong, who are going to we're planning demonstrations. Now we've started something new, a new project in Israel. We've brought together all the mayors. We fund 210 cities in Israel. So it's easy for us to do. We get all the mayors, all the social workers, and all the organizations, the NGOs. We've come together and we formed a coalition to say to the government that they need to do more to help the poor, the vulnerable, the weak, that segment of society. And we need more advocates like that. And if it means coming out with a demonstration against the government of Israel, as much as I don't want to do that, I will do that because my goal is not to play games with the federation, not to play games with the government, not to form coalitions for just to get my name in the newspaper. I keep my eye on the ball.
We started with the bridge builder. And at the beginning, it describes you as this young Orthodox Jew, Democrat. Are you still an Orthodox Jew, Yechiel?
No. I am a
Are you-
Jew who keeps halacha, who refuses to put himself into a box of reform or conservative or Orthodox or Haredi. I am a Jew who people would say, I'm Orthodox, I don't turn on lights on Shabbos, I don't use a phone. I am a Jew who observes halacha, who more of a Hasidic type of a Jew than Misnagdish, but by what the standards would be, yes, I'm an Orthodox Jew with Orthodox smicha, but refusing to play the game of falling into a box. I'm a part of Klal Yisrael. And the boxes have, unfortunately, number one, the boxes have become narrower and narrower. So it's not just Orthodox, it's this kind of Orthodox. And it's up the hill in Muncie or down the hill in Muncie. And it's that kind of Orthodox. And then there's of course, another place in Williamsburg. And that kind of Orthodox. And then there's Bnei Brak Orthodoxy, and then there's the Shtachim, the settlers' Orthodoxy, and then there's Kippah Sruga, and I'm just talking within the Orthodox. We don't have the luxury today to be playing those games, and that's sinat chinam. Orthodox Jews who attack churches, who attack reform, can't have a reform bat mitzvah ceremony in the president's house. My gosh, where have we come? The problem, it was once said, and this is a great quote. It's not from me. I heard it originally from Dr. Martin Marty. I kind of adjusted it a little bit. But the problem with our generation is that the tolerant often lack commitment, and the committed often lack tolerance. I would add to that this is the challenge of our generation, to teach our children to be committed to their faith, committed to their community, committed to their values, but to be tolerant, open, respectful, and loving towards others who don't share that. That is the challenge we face. And unfortunately, there are very few rabbis, very few leaders that fit into that bill. The Yitz Greenbergs, who I mentioned before, the David Ellensons on the reform side. I mean, I can mention a lot more. My roommate, my old roommate, Joe Tolushkin, the people who are like that are few and far between and have been pushed out by the establishment of whatever establishment it is, and they, unlike me, cannot start their own thing and have it financially successful. And that's the tragedy. The challenge is to fund and to support and to give a place to those. We say that about Muslims all the time. You know, where are the moderate Muslims attacking them? We should be funding them. We should be supporting. I was just in Jordan last week, bringing food and medicine and arranged for operations for 4 people and housing for 50 Druze families who have fled the Syrian conflagration and are in Jordan without that. It's the first time they ever met a Jew, first time they ever met an Israeli, first time they ever met a rabbi. And this rabbi Israeli Jew is coming to help them with food and with medicine and to provide them with operations, that medical operation. If everyone, this is the Chabad philosophy, shalom, peace, shalom is not going to come from on top. Shalom is going to come when each of us, whether they're a federation leader, an AIPAC leader, a Jew, Jewish, is going to do some chesed, acts of kindness, chesed, to help others. And that will break down the barriers and form the bridges. It's called bridge builder because these activities and acts of chesed have enabled millions of Christians to now be seen as our friends and to become our friends. Everyone, you don't have to be a federation director. Everyone can be someone who carries this message of chesed, who brings greater light into this world of darkness and this sinister, cynical Jewish world that cares almost, I mean, it's an exaggeration, but is more concerned with how big our budget is compared to theirs than they are with the goal of being chesed to one another.
There's a saying that the greater the man, the larger the Yetzer Hara. The Jewish tradition has a wonderful understanding that if one is not driven from within inside, and in English we call it ego, but ego is what drives creativity. And look, some people have an ego and it's maniacal, and some people have a Yetzer Hara that is destructive. But the genius of the Jewish tradition is the Yetzer Hara in and of itself can be channeled for purposes that are constructive, that build society, that create better life. If you have a healthy Yetzer Hara, it should surprise no one. Your Yetzer Hara has driven you to do extraordinarily wonderful, creative things for the betterment not only of the state of Israel, but the Jewish people as a whole, and I would argue for humanity as a whole. And you quoted earlier, "B'makom she'ein anashim hishtadel hiyot ish." You didn't translate it for our audience. In a place where there are no mention, strive to be a mensch. That's what you've been. That's what you are. That's what you're doing for Jewish life. It's an honor to have you at this table. It's an honor to be a friend of yours. I wish you kol tuva hatzlacha. The only thing you have to promise me is this will not be your last appearance, only your second. We will continue this often. In the meantime, you continue the work you're doing from strength to strength. Thank you. Wonderfully done. Rabbi Yechiel Eckstein, President of the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. The book done by Zev Chafetz is The Bridge Builder. And by the way, neither Yechiel nor Zev are making any money here. Any money that's made through the sale of this book goes to the fellowship. But it is a fabulous read, and a read that will tear at your heart, but also explain to you who this extraordinary man that we've met is. And I hope you make sure it's part of your own library. As always, I invite you to be in touch with me with any thoughts or comments you may have to anything you heard on this edition of L'Chaim. Please email me, write me, post on our Facebook page, or tweet me. I look forward to hearing your thoughts. Until the next time, I'm Mark Golub. L'Chaim, my friends, to life.
L'Chaim is a presentation of Jewish education in media.
We would be pleased to send a complimentary DVD of this program to anyone who wishes to support JBS, the Jewish Broadcasting Service, with a tax-deductible gift of $36, double chai or more, to the nonprofit organization Jewish Education in Media. Simply visit the JBS homepage and click on the Donate button to make a donation by PayPal or your credit card. And please indicate the program for which you would like a DVD. Or you can send your tax-deductible check made out to JEM, to Jim, Post Office Box 180, Riverdale Station, Bronx, New York 10471. And again, please remember to indicate which program you would like to receive with our compliments. And we thank you for your kind support.